This is the Nomad Futurist podcast, a podcast about the evolution of technology, society, and transformation. Connect with us, share your thoughts with us at nomadfuturist.com. Let's get this started. Here are Phil and Nabil.
Hello. Welcome to Nomad Futurist. This is your co-host, Nabil Mahmood from Kona, Hawaii.
This is your co-host, Philip Koblenz from Montclair, New Jersey.
You told me I need extra instruction. I can't help it. Tony Grayson from Bainbridge Island, Washington.
And I'm Aiden Grayson from Seattle, Washington.
I think you guys have to fully recognize how special this moment is. This is the first time we've had a father-son duo and a Nomad Futurist podcast. And depending on what happens here, could easily be
the last.
Well, based on what we know, Tony can talk, and we have heard Aiden can out-talk him. So let's
see if the apple we'll see how far the apple falls from the tree.
Yeah, so looking forward to it. Tony, let's start with you. What do you do? Give us a high-level overview of your background and how you got to where you're at today in your career.
Yeah, so I had a very different path to tech. Did 21 years in the Navy. My life's goal was to command my own submarine, and I did that. But of those 4 years that I was in command, I probably spent 70% of my time at sea. And I really wanted to spend more time with my family because that's where I wanted to focus my time at. So I got out of the Navy and lucky enough to work for Facebook right off and there was supposed to originally run EMEA facilities, but kind of got taken off into more of the ISP, OSP design, construction, and then kind of the operations on the side. And kind of at Facebook, I kind of realized that, hey, I kind of know how this cloud and platform thing works because you don't know what a submarine actually has, like 12 to 13 megawatts of IT load. So we have a substrate, we have an overlay, we have all this stuff that's very similar to what a platform operates at. It was a bunch of different terms. So I kind of understood how the cloud kind of worked and how the software stack worked with the network, work with the physical infrastructure, and kind of really started trying to learn more about that and go into it deeper. Of course, the Bay Area was kind of expensive. Coming from the Navy, they don't pay anything. And so I couldn't compete with the people like Aiden making $2 million in stock and everything. And so we moved back up to Seattle where we wanted to retire after the Navy. And I was flying the Nerdbird down every week down to Facebook. And I don't know what the Nerdbird is, but it's an Alaskan flight, takes off like 6:30, goes down to San Francisco. It might as well just be assigned seats because you always sit next to your best friends. It's always the same people on the flight, same people going down on Monday, coming back on Thursday. But I did that for about 6 months. And that was kind of why I wanted to leave the Navy. So got a chance to work at AWS and then at Oracle, great opportunity to kind of pick up their networking side. And then I kind of moved into the data center and kind of the cloud strategy side. But about a year ago, I was talking to a bunch of mentors like Chris Crosby and Surreal and Brian and Doug and Randy. And I kind of was like, wow, Robin Kunda sold his business, Airtronic. I'm like, man, I want to try doing something like this. I want to try to make a product on this kind of stuff. So luckily enough, Chris Crosby had a line of business that he was interested in kind of revamping, which was at that time called EdgePoint. So I came over to Compass about 8 months ago, really kind of focused on what's the future of Edge and how do we solve the physical infrastructure for what that is. So that's what it is. We're rebranded Quantum. We're focused on, and really it's white space as a service or data centers anywhere or however you want to look at it. But it's just really giving people a wrapper with the computer network.
Outstanding. Well, for starters, I want to thank you for your service.
Thanks
for keeping us safe, Tony.
But we can't talk about it here. I have some great sea stories.
Oh, we can totally talk about it here if we have time.
Remember.
Oh, we'll get to that in Nomad Futurist after dark.
Growing up as a child, was Navy it for you? That's what your passion was?
My dad was in the Air Force, and so I grew up with that. But my grandfather was actually a pilot in World War II. So I grew up with World War II stories about how he shot down in World War II, about how he spent a month on a raft in the middle of the Pacific in World War II, how he went on an island. I mean, you could make a movie about it. So I kind of grew up with that.
I feel like there have been a couple of movies about him.
Well, yeah, exactly. A little bit different though. The getting shot down in a plane, 14 days at a raft and wash up on an island. That kind of really instilled in me the country before self kind of thing. And so I was always kind of leaning towards the military first. And then this wonderful thing called Top Gun came out. And I was like, man, I got to go fly. And then I realized, oh crap, I had bad eyes. So I couldn't fly. So the next best thing to me was submarines. And what I really liked about submarines, it's really that last vestige of command where you're alone and unafraid. So in a ship, your boss is right there. Your boss's bosses can be linked in by satellite and be there. Same thing with airplanes. And so a submarine, when you submerge, that's it. It's you and your crew of 150 to 200. You're 38 years old as a CEO, making decisions that are on the front page of CNN if you mess up, or if you do it well, go back to the president. He or she reads them personally. And so that's kind of what I really liked about the kind of nuclear Navy.
Yeah, the thing that you really liked about it is what probably makes people pee themselves when thinking about taking that role. Were you into IT and computers? It strikes me that you went into the submarine and then immediately made the shift to cloud infrastructure. And I get the IT load thing, that there are corollaries, but is that something that you had an interest in?
I'm definitely been a computer nerd ever since my Vic 20 day, or Vic 20? Yeah. And Commodore 64 and Amiga, and building and messing around with my own computers. And I used to cut the plexiglass in, put RGB before it was cool, and overclocking it. I still remember my first phase.
Overclocking it when it was an actual clock.
Yeah, when it was an actual clock. Exactly. Get that one core up to 200 megahertz or something. But two-phase cooling and all that stuff, I just loved to eke the most out of that. And I like the engineering aspect. And so that was kind of how that all works together, how the software layer works on side, the compute storage always has been fascinating to me.
Did you also did you always like to talk?
I don't know. I guess so.
You think
he was the commander.
When you think of a submarine, he didn't start as the commander, right? But did you start as the commander?
What do you do in the sub? You talk.
Right. Well, you would think that you would go on the sub because you were antisocial. I don't know. It's pretty dense. It's a pretty dense. Yeah. I look at that.
Introverts on subs. I mean, the nuclear Navy, and I hope I don't offend anyone here, definitely does not make a lot of extroverts. There are a lot of introverts on subs, but it is. But you can't beat it. You go around with 150 of your close friends and crew, and you pull into port, and you go out all as a group together, and you fight alongside each other, and everyone if something happens, you're all going down. So it's not like you're in infantry where
in our business, metaphorically, you're like, oh, if we all just get into the same boat and row in the same direction. In your world, it's like there is no. That's right.
It's tough to describe for people outside, but it's just that teamwork, man. It really is. It's something that I have seen it out here too in Submarine, but it's just a little bit different. But in that team, you really are all running together, and you really all have each other's backs. And it's a tough thing to describe unless you're actually on there and doing it. It's like nothing, no culture I've ever been in before.
So we've heard from the king.
Exactly. I think if you can talk underwater, you can talk anywhere, anytime. Just don't talk faster than your bubbles. Aiden, thank you very much for joining us. This is the first time we've had the father-son duo. We've heard a lot of great things about you, and your dad tells us that you can out-talk him, so it might be genetics.
He also takes credit for all of your success. So
exactly. The Space Needle speaks for itself. Let's start with getting to know you a little bit. What do you do?
So I recently signed on to be a cybersecurity consultant at Ernst & Young, and I'll be starting that in September. I just graduated SDSU actually, so I'm happy to be in the.
So how young is the son? So you graduated what, 22?
Yeah, I graduated a couple of weeks ago, actually, less than a month.
How old are you? 22 years old?
Oh, I am 22. Yes.
Oh my God, 22 and 22.
Yeah, he came so close to being born on a leap year, and I wanted to screw with him the rest of his life. Just if he would have held out for 3 more hours, we could have been born on February 29th, and he could be a much younger age.
Right. Well, I think, and I'll let Aiden speak for himself, but I'm pretty sure you got a fantastic opportunity to screw with him for the rest of his life, whether or not he was born on a leap year. Aiden, take it away.
Yeah. I also want to first respond to something my dad said. He said he loves building computers, yet for almost like 8 years when I was growing up, he wouldn't touch them. I'd be like, Dad, we should build a computer. And then he would, no, I'll buy one. I'll buy a great one. And then he would buy it. It would be like, oh, just okay. And then I'd come out and I'm like, hey, you can build it like this. And he would totally ignore me. So I'm going to make that, put that on the record, please.
Well, that's when he was the commander.
That's when you could buy them. He was building them when he had to find like the spare parts, and he was crafting gears and chipsets out of parts.
Exactly.
So your dad tells us that you had a startup company and some sort of exit. Do tell us about that.
Yeah. So when I first got to college, I knew that I kind of wanted to work in sort of a technical environment. I always knew I had that sort of creative background. Even in high school, I loved the arts. So it's kind of like an atypical approach to like tech, but I always really enjoyed just having a creative expression and a creative way to kind of work, I suppose. And so when I found entrepreneurship, I found that it was an extremely creative process. I could go up there with a really stupid idea. I did have plenty of them. My dad can attest to this. I would try and pitch him something that just may not have just worked at all. But what I found in that entrepreneurship is I could be a lot more like kind of open with that side of myself. I could approach things from a way that maybe hadn't been tested before, or it may just be totally unique. And so that led me into creating my first startup company, which was Shore Cubby. And that was kind of a beach-based locker system for the San Diego area. For the area, it's like super, I don't want to say it's like dangerous by any means, it's not, but there's a lot of crime, at least by the beaches, just because of the amount of tourists. You get a lot of traffic down there, and people go to the beach pretty much every day. Like if you live by the water, there are a lot of people that'll go and just surf like every day, sometimes even twice a day. And they don't bring their like bags or anything. They don't bring anyone else. So the way that they would store their stuff was in their car, and they would toss their keys up in a tree or hide them or whatever the case may be.
Their keys in a tree.
Yeah.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, who knows? But when
you gotta go surf. I don't think where you're getting home is really not your concern. You're out there to surf.
And yeah, we tried to kind of solve that. My co-founder was the one who experienced that the most. I'm not a big, but we decided to make this beach-based like digital locker system and place them in high traffic areas and do it at a scale where we could make the cost really low. A lot of the areas or a lot of the storage solutions that were already existing, just either made by the area or made by the local government, were just larger items. And so we made a bunch of smaller ones, and we could charge like $3 an hour.
What happened thereafter?
Well, we started to get funding actually. So it took off a little bit. By SDSU had funded us about $10K and just initial seed funding. Not a huge sum, but it was pretty great for both of us because we could start the prototype.
Adjusted for inflation, it's like $37 million right now.
Oh yeah, exactly. we put it all in gold. Actually, it's a solid gold, so it's still maintained a pretty decent value. But we started the prototype. We got in contact with a couple of producers. We almost had a contract written up for a producer over in it was Russia somewhere, and we were ready to
right.
Yeah, it's manufacturer.
Were you? I guess you were not in the submarine outside Russia while he was signing that deal. That was
right. No, I was not. No,
that's when Elon was purchasing rockets. All right. So what happened, Aiden, thereafter?
So that's kind of when stuff started to hit the fan with COVID. It got a bit dicey, and we couldn't really reasonably ask people to go out and spend. So for like the initial like contract, we were trying to partner with local shops, and we're like, okay, we could probably get this to you for about $6,000. We had some math to kind of estimate how much foot traffic this would bring into your store. And that's kind of what the angle we were approaching it at. And we had some people that were ready to sign on up until COVID started really getting dicey. Stuff was shutting down. And we just weren't able to secure much contract or secure any contracts. And the stipulation for SDSU at the time was, okay, we're not going to give you any more funding until you get a contract signed. And that was sort of the catch-22 because people wanted to see it. We couldn't buy it until they gave us more, and we couldn't really do anything there. We started talking to other areas as well. Like we spoke to a couple of incubators in San Diego, and we were accepted by one of them, but they also had a lot of stipulations that we just couldn't really deal with. And so that was about my exit from the company. My co-founder is still doing it. He's got like a different approach now, but it's more like a car attachable locker rather than a beach device.
So growing with Tony Grayson, this guy is a legend in our space. What led you to get involved in technology? I mean, was there a transition point? Like, sounds like you were into arts and stuff as well at an early on stage. What was the switching point for you?
Well, I would say it kind of intertwined, I suppose. I was doing all that art stuff when I was younger, but I also did a lot of computer stuff. And my dad, like you mentioned, he was out for sometimes 8 months, and that kind of left me as the designated tech guy. Like every family has one, and I was that one. And so I ended up just kind of like fixing the modem when it was down, or calling Comcast, or making sure that everything was set up correctly. And that's kind of where my interest started. And then from there, it kind of just came into like, okay, I can start taking CS classes in high school, started taking them in college, and that kind of blossomed in where I am now. But as much as I rip on my dad, and sometimes for good reason, oftentimes just because I'm joking, but he really did kind of inspire that in me, because I would see like some of the stuff he was doing. I'd see his old computers, and like I was like, what? Wow. Why don't we go, work on something like this? Why don't we start doing this? And it got me excited. And then over time, he sort of brought me into the fold there with the data center community. And I interned with the infrastructure masons for a little while. And that was like a super eye-opening experience for me, partially because the tech was super neat. There's a lot of great people in the iMasons community. Huge shout out to Jeff Melchek and Simon Allen, great people. They got me really excited. But I also found there was a substantial amount of business, which was my major at the time. And I found that I kind of like could intertwine the two in a way that I didn't expect. And here I am now.
What did you think, Tony, when he said he wanted to start a business with a friend and all that? I guess there's a multi-parts to this question, but let's start with that one.
No, I think I was happy. That was kind of at that time, that's what I kind of was leaning towards, where I like working in big tech. I had a great time at Facebook, AWS, and Oracle, but there's something to be said about working in a small company and trying to build a business that you can look back on. So definitely encouraged on that.
So who inspired who? Did he inspire you or did you inspire him?
I don't know. Maybe he inspired me. And then he decided to read Reddit though and invest in horrible stock and try to drive it up and write it back. Hold on. I stopped.
Well, let's hear about that.
This is the yuck that Aiden. I'm just going to sit back. The string has been pulled. Aiden.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was an interesting little experience there. So as I'm sure you may remember, GameStop and AMC at one point were going up quite a bit. And I had always kind of been casually interested in stocks, but I saw something on Reddit and
the Reddit stocks.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was Wall Street's bets. And I was like, oh, we could do this. And I got a bunch of my friends together and we put down like, for us, quite a bit of money. It was like, I think the tune of like 10K total. I put down about $1,000 and it started making money, like a significant amount. It was like we had option chains set up. So we were each going to be like, the more it rose, the greater our chances of like, it was just exponential. The growth that we saw in like one day, I was showing my dad at one point. I'm like, Dad, look, I just made $5,000. And he's like, oh, that's cool. And so what we ended up doing was like, okay, at the very end of the day, at the end of the trading day, we were like, we're not going to sell. We're going to double down. We're not going to sell anything. We had each made a hefty sum. Okay, it's going to go to the moon. And we'd all like watched The Wolf of Wall Street, like, ooh, that's us. We can do that. And immediately the next day, it just tanked. It was like worth nothing.
Yeah, and this is the all you can tell them is that sell it, and they're not going to listen to you.
Well, that's the old adage, right? I think this is what the second part of my question was, which is, do you try to guide him or do you let them make their own mistakes? You almost have to figure out let them figure it out on their own.
I'm a big believer, and I'm not the person who made this up. It's, man, smart people have to hit that ditch. And that's how they learn. And you can sit there and tell them, but until they hit that ditch, then they're not, but you want to prevent them from hitting the pole. And so this was seeming to me more like a ditch moment where we can learn that Reddit's probably not a great investment platform, that AMC and GameStop are definitely not worth whatever, like $50 per stock. And
what does it mean when the red light is on the stove? I don't know, son. Why don't you go check?
That's a poll. That's a poll kind of thing. But the ditch kind of thing. But the funny thing was he put it out there and Variety Magazine picked it up, and I have never been in Variety Magazine.
Right. Yeah, you can get as much exposure through negative press as you can with positive press. So, young Aiden, what did we learn? You have two experiences here that are pretty unique, right? You have this because you're a crazy person that was raised by someone that gave you like unreasonable amounts of confidence, clearly, and you did this startup thing, and then what happened, and then you got the Robin Hood thing going. What did you learn?
Well, I found that, first of all, it was fun to tell my dad I was a CTO before he was. That was really fun. So that was a big.
Right. So we learned about ego.
That was a big one. No, but seriously, I learned like you said, confidence. That was kind of something that I didn't really have going into college. I certainly had it, but it wasn't like to the extent I do now in my own abilities, particularly when it comes to tech and business. At least I'm sure you're familiar with, like, you have to pitch a lot with like startups, especially. You speak to people like Shark Tank. You have to do that to get funding. And so I found that within myself, and that made me a whole lot more excited to enter the real world. And I also discovered that I should do some more research before really jumping into something.
Better to make those decisions before you have to support a wife and a kid and the entire freedom of the nation.
I would agree.
Yeah. The defense rests.
Yeah. Tony, what's your side of it? What did you learn from that experience?
No, I think I would have. I think I went to the school from the academy. So my college experience was I couldn't skip classes. I had to show up on time. You double up on your hours and you had military training afterwards. So that was my college experience. So it was good to see him kind of find himself at college, but also I completely agree with that entrepreneurship and that feeling to get out there and try it. Now, I do think the Reddit thing was dumb. You have to know what you're doing when you do it. And I get it. And you should have sold that day we talked, but that's okay.
What is the old adage? You have to know when to hold them and you have to know when to fold them.
Hold them, yeah. But it was good seeing him. And to be honest, I've never been that good at trading stock or day stocks and that kind of stuff. And Aiden's taught me a lot about that kind of stuff too and how you can watch it. I don't have the attention span to sit there and stare at a computer screen and get to that kind of stuff and watch it all the time. It's not for the ADD in me. I can't do it. I'm pretty bad enough with sport.
One question. Did it ever occur to you to follow your dad's lead into the military? Was that something that you saw as a does that seem like fun?
I did actually. For a time, there was a point where I didn't want to join the Navy. I wanted to be in the Coast Guard. And I thought that would be like a super great experience for me. With that said, I think I ended up just continue along with my education at SDSU just because I wasn't sure if I could really fit in with that sort of structure. Like I asked my dad a lot about it and he would say like, oh, we had to march for lunch. And I'm like, well, hold on.
Are you saying you didn't make your own son march for lunch? It was only for that was your little soldier, man?
He had to do 100 push-ups before he could eat. And then whenever his room was messy, 100 push-ups and some burpees in there too. So we tried to simulate it a little bit.
He's doing burpees while you were still burping him. Incredible.
Yeah, there you go. How many siblings do you have, Aiden?
I have 2 siblings. One is in college and the other one is a junior in high school.
And they're joining us now. I'm kidding.
Are they interested? Are they interested in the same industry? Or they've got a different direction there?
I guess I've been moved out for a while now, but I can say that my little sister...
no idea. You must have some idea.
Well, I do. It's just like my little sister was going into like social work. And so I don't think she'll be entering this industry anytime soon. But my little brother, he's still kind of figuring himself. So I think my dad might be better equipped to answer that one.
Are you going to try to fix all the mistakes you made with Aiden?
I am not. I think once I said they got to hit that ditch, I'd rather have him earlier in the year.
Yeah, just get him the ditch earlier and earlier. He was starting a business at 6.
Exactly. I get him on every day. When are you going to start your lemonade stand out there? You should be out there selling. You like your brother.
You're not leaving this house without at least one bankruptcy under your name.
Exactly.
Or one bad stock acquisition.
Exactly.
So Tony, 2016 was to last command, I'm assuming.
Yes. Yeah. 2016. So I got out pretty much right after my command tour, got out, won the Stockdale Award, and what a greater place to go out in the Navy than kind of riding high like that. So do I miss it? Sometimes. Yeah, I do. Like I said, that teamwork and that kind of alone and unafraid and out there doing missions and that kind of stuff I do miss, but I love this field. I think it's super interesting and I think the sky's the limit.
So from a very structured life for roughly about 20 plus years to Facebook.
It was
share.
Yeah, I was very lucky where I didn't talk for long, right? So VP of data centers at Facebook, he's like, well, Tony, you think what you're doing, but you don't. So you're not allowed to make any decisions for 6 months. And what he was trying to do is, I've seen all these operational problems before. I've led in the Navy, but it is different. Even though it looks similar, it's different. And so during those 6 months, I was to get acclimated a little bit to that kind of after the transition. And I think it was hugely important because I would have made some dumb decisions at Facebook or tried to lead more like the military or you name it. It wouldn't have worked out well for me. So I am super glad that Facebook allowed me the opportunity to kind of grow into the role and kind of understand how things are different, and they're very different on the outside.
You landed Facebook anyway. Did they find you in the military? Did you have some set of experience other than your Commodore 64 building?
To be honest, I think it was, and I hate to say it, I think it was a Stockdale Award. So the Stockdale Award got me noticed by them, and then I was for the facility side. I'm used to running submarines, running data centers, and the facility side is no different. But then it was this competing kind of priorities of, can I also do this other stuff? And so that stuff they needed me more to do than the facility side. But The bad thing was we've been trying to move overseas forever. And that facility job was supposed to be in Dublin. And we were excited to finally get overseas. And the previous time we had gone overseas, we were in Bahrain for 3 years, which was awesome. Happy to be there in Bahrain for 3 years, but we always wanted to kind of go to kind of that Europe. And so that it would have been curious to see if we would have been in Dublin instead of San Francisco, what would have happened.
You see, we have people on the podcast, right? And they talk about how they've went from one career transition to another, and you kind of take it, and it seems in the moment as though they're the ones making all the decisions because it's their careers that go from one to another, and you rarely get the opportunity to see it from the inside. So, like, what was the family discussion about these career changes? I have to imagine, knowing Tony, I'm not sure, but I have to imagine in general, it was good news that your father was not going to go on tour and leave for long stretches of time and he was going to be home. But were you guys involved in a lot of these conversations? Dad comes home and he's like, I'm joining Facebook, which I assume you knew because that's where you talk to all your friends. You generation, you don't know nothing. Write them a letter like the olden days on a typewriter or by hand. Cursive. Do you guys still learn cursive?
No, not learn cursive.
You do not. They do not. It's just a bunch of squiggly lines. It looks like the ocean. So how does the family react to that?
Well, I guess I could kind of say that there was a whole lot of discussion, at least within the family. So like anytime there was a major decision, it was kind of like informed beforehand. It's hard to say that you can give an 8-year-old like decisions about like what your parents are going to do for work, but to the extent that you could.
Look at Facebook, Daddy. Instagram is where it's at.
I did tell him like Facebook is super. It was right at the time as the Cambridge scandal when he started working there. And I would ask him like, hey, do you have any like issues with that? He didn't answer that question. But in terms of like everything else, he certainly was very open with it, especially with like bigger moves. Like
thanks for ruining the political system, Tony.
Hey, I did my part. Thank you.
Aiden, what's next for you? I mean, you're starting at Ernst & Young. So what's next? What's the next 5-10 year plan for you?
I don't think I'm too out of the woods with entrepreneurship. It still has me. I've been working with my mentor and I can't talk too much about it, but we're trying to start something up there as well. I have a mentor who works at a large VC and we're trying to do something. I met him over at RSA last week too. And we were just talking to people there and we networked a whole lot and we got some people on board. And so I'm looking to hopefully continue that to the extent that I can, depending on what EY says about that, but hopefully continue along in the cyber path, maybe go back into data centers as well. It's kind of just open. The world's an ever-changing place. And I don't know, I thank my family and especially my dad for kind of exposing me to that change early so I can be open to, trying something new in an area I didn't expect to be.
Yep. And so if you're hiring, he also knows networking too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, look at that. He's still trying to get another job.
Feel for the price of one.
If he wants to get into his networking and software and cybersecurity,
is the side hustle.
Yeah, exactly. Any particular reason why you pick cyber or any other sub verticals within the technology industry?
So I can answer a little bit of that. Aiden was a tinfoil hat person. Aiden's convinced the government is listening to him right now and the aliens are going to get him.
Hold on just a second. There's no was. I am a tinfoil hat person. And I've always kind of been like that, even from a young age, not like to an insane extent, but like I was always like, hey,
so if you imagine a 10-year-old having a conversation, dad needed some money. We needed money for, well, I need a VPN. Mm-hmm. You're 10 years old. What do you need a VPN for? I don't want people spying on me. So this is back, how far it's gone back.
It got me interested for sure. It wasn't like paranoia by any means, but it was just kind of like a fascination of like, well, hey, how do I make it more difficult for things to be tracked? I don't know.
Was your dad working for the people that were spying on you in the tinfoil hat? Like, how does the tinfoil conspiracy, you have a Navy man at the helm of the family for like 20 years, right? So they're the ones that the conspiracy is against, are they not?
Well, you see, I watched a lot of documentaries, one of which was Ancient Aliens. And I knew from that series that my dad wasn't really the one in charge or making those final calls.
He's just a cog. He's a cog in a wheel.
He was the one who has control. He didn't wear the tinfoil hat. So I was. So I was totally good. But my dad, I was trying to work to get him out of that.
You wouldn't understand, Dad, while he's manning the nuclear submarine. You wouldn't. You don't even know. You don't even know. You don't even know. Dad.
Yeah, it was underwater, Phil.
Yeah. How does that even work? You can say there's a man on the moon too, right? Sure.
moon,
I think Aiden believes the moon landing was faked, right, Aiden?
the Earth is flat. The moon landing isn't real because the moon isn't real.
This award is losing its luster.
Oh my God.
Can they rescind your position at Facebook? What is his name? Chris Crosby. Chris, we have to talk about this investment. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think we got an answer. We found where the edge is.
There's 4 edges. There's 4 exact edges.
I'm a round earther. I'm saying Aiden's the flat earth.
Right. Amazing. You get to have it both ways. You get to have it both ways. One of you is definitely right. And we'll go as far as to say that. I guess the jury is still out.
Well, my dad could attest. I like to instigate those kinds of conversations. I'll be like, so globe heads, and I won't even refer to them like as their names.
Globeheads.
Globe heads. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Tony, we learned about globeheads, and we learned about, what is it? Fly nerd, air nerd.
Oh yeah.
What's that? Air nerd? No. What do they call it? The nerd, the nerd flight between Seattle and San Francisco.
The nerd bird.
The nerd bird.
There you go.
It exists. And I think everyone has their nerd bird. It's just the Bay Area is just too expensive. So,
Nerd bird.
Yep.
Tony, you certainly had a very interesting career. What are some of your key strengths and lessons that you have learned that you'll tell Aiden and other children that or kids rather?
Well, actually, Aiden's not gonna listen anymore. You tell kids that will actually listen to you.
I think there's a couple of things. The first thing is kind of, you got to have grit a little, that you will, no matter how successful you are, you'll fall on your ass a little bit. And what makes you better is learning from that mistake and picking yourself up and continuing on. So I think grit is a big thing. I think really trying to separate your ego from yourself is another big thing. It's interesting. Why do you actually run presentations past people to get their buy-off? It's because you don't want to look like you're wrong. What's wrong with being wrong? Not everyone's right all the time. So I think it's trying to separate yourself from that ego piece to really focus on what's important and take incremental steps to success.
Let the record show that Tony never runs his presentations by anyone prior to delivering them, because who cares?
I didn't say anyone. I just said, don't spend a lot of time running it past people. Get everyone together, get their incremental feedback and move on. I'm a big believer too now in kind of the crawl, rock, and never run. And I never really understood it, because everything in the past has always been build the airplane once it's been taken off, but you waste a lot of time on a bunch of stuff that's not important and you don't really fail as much. So I think kind of crawl, rock, and never run is a huge one for me right now too. And you can even see it on Quantum too. I definitely had a gearing towards, when we were making the MVP for our beta, that I wanted this diamond encrusted technical feat that could fly and walk on legs and do a bunch of other stuff. When what's an MVP? It just needs to get out and demonstrate the product. So that's kind of also been learning. And sorry, I'm kind of rambling. So hopefully,
no, this is good.
Rambling is good. Yeah.
Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Your job.
That's exactly it.
Let the perfect
be the enemy. Focus on the 20%, not the 80%. It's all this kind of stuff.
We and Tony can go on the road and he can ramble, and I can succinctly create a bumper sticker out of the ramblings. I think this could be a show.
This is what Tony actually means after half.
Like, I'll have a little oak tag or a little cardboard.
Exactly.
Aiden, from your perspective, what have you learned?
From my dad, I think a lot of the stuff that he just mentioned, he kind of instilled within us. Certainly that grit. We did move around a lot, so it was tough, but he kind of instilled that both in myself and my siblings. And then I guess from my own experiences, knowing how to fail. That's something my dad also mentioned, but I think that's something that I kind of need to experience firsthand to kind of know what failure tasted like, and then kind of how to recover. Like with entrepreneurship, I'm sure my dad can certainly attest to this with Quantum. You're expected to kind of mess up sometimes. Granted, you don't want to mess up so bad that you can't ever recover, but taking a chance, taking a risk, and having it be calculated is super. And I find myself being a lot more confident to take risks going forward. Granted, not stock risks anymore, and I don't buy on margin anymore, but everything else I try and make it.
What if it's a sure thing, Aiden? Well, sure thing. Reddit is going to be, I'm telling you, I got it.
Of a sure thing?
Of a sure thing.
I'd be interested.
This tinfoil manufacturer is going to start mass producing hats.
What was the name again?
It's called Reynolds Metals, but MEDALS. I have a question about what it was like growing up in a military family. So I imagine it was clearly difficult for you and your siblings. I have COVID kids, basically. They're 5 and 9. And right now, if I leave the house for 3 hours, I'm getting inundated with where are you? Why aren't you here? What is happening right now? So it's crazy. Did you look at that differently? Did you struggle with it at any point, or was it just the reality of your life from the time you were born to the time it ended? So you just didn't know any different, and do you look different upon it now than you did then?
Well, I can say for most of like growing up until I moved out for college, I was pretty okay with it. Like it was just kind of a part of life. The only thing I had really experienced was that. And like I had two great parents. I rip on my dad, but I love him. He was great. He is great. And yeah, sorry, I put you in the wayside. I'm sorry.
Let the record show that Tony Grayson is tearing up right now. Big man is weeping like a child.
And I guess it didn't really hit me until college that it was so abnormal to be okay with just leaving something behind. Like when I got to college, it would have been the longest I've ever been in one place. It would be San Diego. And that was kind of like funky to me because I was like, okay, well now I have to set up my life. And I had never at any point kind of had to do that. Like there was certainly like you would do that every 3 or 4 years, set up a foundation and you build up from that. But it wasn't like firm enough because I always had that understanding that I'd be leaving in a couple of years and then it was okay. So when I got to college, it kind of made me a bit antsy because I'm like, okay, what if I mess up? What if I do something wrong and I can't recover from it? And there's no out from that. I'm there. Like I'm stuck there.
Yeah. And how many high schools did you go to?
I went to 3 high schools. So it wasn't too bad, but that was kind of when it started to, I guess, get a little nerve wracking for me. And it thankfully worked out well in the end.
So ironically, it became most nerve wracking when you didn't have to move.
Yeah, actually.
How was it for you, Tony?
I honestly think that's one of the superpowers of military, to be honest, and veterans is in the military, you switch from job to job every 2 years, you get dropped in, you got to figure out how to do it, how to excel at it. So, that makes it very easy after you kind of learn that it's a little bit different on the outside, kind of moving into the civilian sector, but also trying new jobs to see where your place is and what fits best for you. Because you can just pick stuff up pretty quick and get up to speed and within a couple months. So that's kind of the big takeaway from learning so much. But to be honest, this is why I got out though, was three high schools. And I felt bad for that. It's not something you want to put your kids
through. And I say it now, it's nowhere near your experience, obviously, but we moved right from one place to another. First time my kids moved and were trying to get settled and they changed high schools within the same town. So not nearly the same, but even just the fits and starts with social interaction, with relationships, with friends and all that. It's just, it has these developmental hurdles that I don't think you can really properly quantify. So the way you guys have handled it is not only incredible, but has really likely turned into a superpower where I think it's caused your confidence. It's caused your ability to handle adversity in a way that I think other people your age would probably shrink. So congratulations on not shrinking. I don't know what the point I think, but
Phil, we gotta get Phil out of Jersey. Oh, there's another 40-mile move.
There's no question about it. Somebody needs to invite me on a submarine. Can I get on the submarine just for like 5 seconds? I guarantee you I'd start hyperventilating.
No, I think I do think there's opportunities we could have for those kind of distinguished visitor cruises. I think it's worth to get kind of our sector out to actually see what the Navy, and you could do the Army too or whatever. I mean, I think all of them are equally is good, but to see what those people are like, those people are out there, some on food stamps, doing what they can to defend what we're doing right now. And I think it's great to learn from them and hear from them and talk to them. I mean, I think you could read about it, but until you're actually on a ship or kind of in a regiment deployed and talk to those kids, you get a very different perspective.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed, like about Israel specifically, like Israel is a place where so much new technology comes out of them, and there's the confidence just exudes from an Israeli person is otherworldly, and you have to imagine that has something to do with like the required military action, right?
Yeah, and there's something to be said for that because I've had plenty of people on my submarine that they might have been in jail or they might have lost their way and they stayed for 4 years and they get their college paid for and they came out of there and kind of focused and they needed that. So there's something to be said, I do think, for that, for spending a little bit of time in the military, for that structure and kind of really understand what you have and what you're fighting for. I think it really does matter.
Yeah, discipline does help quite a bit. Well, this has been absolutely phenomenal. Thank you for joining us, Tony, Aiden. This was the first father-son duo. Interesting.
I think we can do it again.
I think we should. Absolutely. Much better than I was expecting.
He's got 2 other kids. So I think let's do another one next week. And then part 3. We'll see. And then the wife. We've never had a husband. You can have the wife.
Exactly. It'll be the family show.
The boxes on Zoom will turn into like the Brady Bunch by the time.
Exactly.
So, Aiden, I want you to share some takeaways. You have had a good start to your career, great guidance from your dad, and exposure and opportunity within the data center space and technology, and I'll get into cybersecurity, and you got a great career ahead of you. Key lessons, key takeaways, and anything different that you would do if you were given an opportunity to do it all over again.
Well, I guess I kind of mentioned it before, but not being afraid to fail. That's kind of the biggest takeaway I've taken from this experience is like running headlong or headfirst into something that you really feel passionate about is a feeling, first of all, it's like no other, but also one that you're able to kind of understand a whole lot more just by jumping in with reasonable, obviously don't do something that's really stupid, but also like taking that risk and then making sure that you take in every, detail of the new environment that you're in. That's one thing. I guess with entrepreneurship, being creative, taking a new approach to something is something that I feel like is kind of underrated. Obviously, everyone says try something new and see how it works. But I think to really try and innovate, you kind of have to listen to those crazy ideas, the ones that may not be like super feasible now, but could be developed into something that could be a potential application or a new use case for something that already exists.
I think sometimes people fail to see how creativity works in our space because you think that creativity is kind of on the flip side of like the part of your brain you need to use to understand technology. And really, they're so interrelated because we're just scratching the surface of trying to find solutions to problems that we think are inevitable, but really are not.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that.
Yeah. So, Tony, I can't imagine the feeling that you have right now with having a son like Aiden and him starting his career and his journey and him being successful. What are some of the key takeaways for you? Would you do anything different in your personal career and being a father and seeing him excel?
No, I'm super happy the way.
Other than moving to Dublin.
Other than that, that is the one takeaway. It's try to get overseas sometime. But the takeaways, I wish I could have spent more time with them. He turned out great. In fact, they all turned out great.
I was going to wait for the but. Like, he turned out great. What at a 3.8 bad? That gets you the Hall of Fame.
I was 33.3%.
It's batted 308 bad, but it's just super exciting to see him come out and go in that field and kind of following that technical field because it's great because a business background going in, but also with the love of that kind of the technical field and doing that kind of as a on the side too. It's heartwarming to see it. It's and my daughter too is going into this kind of social work and she's gonna go to NYU. She's going to NYU right now and go get her master's in social work to go take care of people. And so it's kind of watching your kids grow up and getting out there to give means a lot to me, I guess. I feel like I've done well. No matter what happens, I get from whatever success you get at kind of in our space. I think it's trumped by what your kids can do.
Aiden, any interest in joining quantum?
I've asked him. He's like,
and he said no.
Show me the money.
Yep. It's worse than a no. He'll be like, oh, well, I'll think about it, Aiden. And
I'll think about it. What? Maybe you could submit your resume to HR.
Sorry, Aiden, they screened you out, bud.
One day.
I also want to apologize for one thing. I just noticed this. Aiden and I did not coordinate our shirts, and I apologize that we actually have different shirts in the Grayson family.
I don't think you do. Clearly, there was a sale at Old Navy.
Sharing one shirt, like one left one. I got the bottom half. He's got the top.
It's like Muppet Man. It's like Muppet Man.
We're probably the only family though where the youngest son gives the oldest son all the hand downs.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Well,
and it still remains in fashion. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This has been great. We had the first father-son duo. Tony, Aiden, thank you very much for joining us.
The Graysons. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. This has been great. Nothing lasts forever. Markets will come back, currencies will rebound, businesses will go on, and we'll all move on. That could happen next week, next month, or next year. I'm confident that those who prepare rather than panic will come out of this stronger. Thank you for joining us. This has been brought to you by Nomad Futurist. Check us online at nomadfuturist.com.